We're live. Flyover Thursday. I always keep trying to come up with something catchy to say, like when that countdown ends. I'm pretty sure "We're live" is the least catchy thing I could have possibly chosen.
Yeah, it's better than some sort of like atonal shriek or something, though.
That's true.
Like screaming to get people's attention. Legitimately screaming.
Yeah. Well, after hopefully after this weekend, we won't want to scream.
Hopefully not. I've got to look up. I have an idea for my trivia thing. I haven't done a trivia thing in a few weeks, and I have an idea for one. It's not like the most exciting one, but it's definitely appropriate for this game. I'm ready to get going whenever you guys are.
Yeah, let's just jump into it.
Oh. Gotta turn off my space heater. Can't have that background noise. Yeah, we are good to go.
Great. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. We have a special show today as we prepare you for the visit of Vancouver and St. Louis, the Vancouver Whitecaps, who are on a hot run right now. So it's going to be an exciting show, and we have a lot to break down. I'm going to use this bantery intro to just give a quick mention of the Open Cup. There was a draw this morning for you sickos that got up and watched it. And St. Louis will be playing Union Omaha on May 6th and 7th. So just real quick, we don't have much time to talk about it before we do the good work here. But let's introduce my co-hosts here, and we'll talk about that and then move on to Vancouver. Matt Baker is here, of course, to give us the details on all the games, as well as Stu Holtgren. Stu, let's start with you because you're like the Open Cup guy. Let's just hear what you have to say about that draw on Omaha real quick as we get going here.
Oh, it was great. So Golazo Network actually did the draw. They had a little a show going on this morning where they had the ball draw and all that kind of stuff. So that was fun, where they were able to talk to the matchups a little bit and not just plaster them out there, blast it out on social media. So we knew the groups before the draw happened, so we didn't know exactly what teams we were going to place. But who was that? Mark Fishkin?
Yeah. The Red Bulls guy.
I saw you put out on Blue Sky. Yeah, so that came out, I don't know, half an hour before the draw. So we knew it was going to be either Louisville or Omaha, Union Omaha or Louisville City. And we got Union Omaha, which we played them in 2023 in the third round and won 5-1. I believe AZ got 2 goals in that match.
Matt has another.
And I was looking at yeah. No, I was looking at Isaac Jensen highlights today, I had forgotten he played in that match along with Salmi Pedro.
Yeah, as well as Celio. I was reading up on that today too. Jensen's on a run all of his own. Matt, there's another stat about that game that I had forgotten, but a really cool one and an important one. I imagine you know what I'm talking about.
Was it the one that I said on the show a few weeks ago?
Oh, maybe so. I might have forgotten it already.
It was like the only game that none of Berkey, Leuven, and Klaus started.
Oh, yeah, that is wild. No, I was just saying that it set a record for 22,423 in attendance.
Third round Open Cup attendance record. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I'm hopeful that St. Louis shows up to that level again for this one, because that would be, I mean, the Open Cup's awesome. And you get to see, if you've been starving for goals, this is probably a good opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. And of all cities to kind of go all in on the Open Cup, we should be one of the leading contenders for that. So everyone check out that Open Cup. Wanted to lead with that to make sure everybody knew that was happening May 7th, right? Is the date that we got.
Wednesday, May 7th at 7 p.m.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, let's dive into it. We'll start with the zoom out, the bird's eye view of the two teams heading into this matchup with Vancouver. Matt, take it away.
Yeah, so I was trying to come up with a narrative for this one, and I ended up with the fact that Vancouver seems like they are the matchup that mirrors City's overall trajectory as an organization the most. As far as like when we play them, if we're winning, we're in good form. Like when that happened in our history, we're losing, what it means. City has played Vancouver 4 times, and we're 1-3-0, 1 win, 3 losses, no draws. We had a 3-1 win on May 27th, 2023. We started off that season so hot, and then 3 losses on October 4th, 2023, which mirrors the fact that we had a really downward turn at the end of 2023. And then they were the team that basically put the kibosh on Bradley Carnell's tenure with St. Louis City. The June 29th and July 13th, we played them and lost both of those matches. Simon Betcher is no stranger to the Vancouver Whitecaps. He's the one player we have still with us that has played for them. He played for Vancouver in those 2023 matchups, including a start for the Whitecaps in City's only win there, where he went 57 minutes with 1 shot, no goals. Betcher, I would have loved to talk to him this week, but he had obligations for that the Mers Goodwill partnership that City did. But Betcher has the familiarity with the Whitecaps players, not the coaching staff, because the Whitecaps obviously have a new coach this year. Betcher is going to be somebody that I'm interested to see how he tackles his former team in this upcoming game. But let's take a look at Vancouver real quick, because you mentioned it, Phil. These guys are hot. Vancouver is not just first in the West, but they are the current Supporters Shield leaders in MLS after 8 matches. They are 6-1-1 with 17 goals scored, 6 goals against, and a +11 goal differential. They are undefeated on the road, 2 wins and a draw on the road. They are currently on a 2-match win streak and a 3-match unbeaten streak. So their last 3, they had a 5-1 win at home against Austin last week, which was just absolutely incredible. I was watching the highlights again today, and wow, that was... If you're a City fan, that one gives you like heart palpitations. But if you're just a fan of goal scoring, that was impressive. Before that, they had a 2-0 win at home against Colorado, and then they drew Toronto away 0-0. Some trends in these matches, low goals against. So in their 6 wins and a draw, they've allowed no more than 1 goal against and have kept 4 clean sheets. That's half of their overall matches they've kept clean sheets in. Takaoka, I think, is their goalkeeper. I think he's a TAM player as well. Really impressive goalkeeper, and their defense has been very stout. In their 1 loss, though, they allowed 3 goals. So it's either you open the fire hose against them and they've got leaks all over the place, or they're stout for the game. Early goal scoring is another feature of Vancouver so far. I mentioned last week with Columbus, it was kind of the same, where something happens in Columbus games early. Well, with Vancouver, it's Vancouver scoring. Brian White, who is now tied for the lead in MLS goal scoring through 8 matches with 6 goals, he scored in the first 20 minutes of their last 2 matches, the 13-minute mark and the 19-minute mark, respectively, in the last 2. And even in their 1 loss, they scored at the 15-minute mark to equalize after going down. So watch out for Vancouver early. They've been a goal-scoring team early and often. They have scored first in all but their 1 loss. So this is another trend where if they score early, they score first, they keep these leads, or at least they're good at regaining them, or not losing the draw at the very least. So important to jump out early against Vancouver. That's one of my stories for later on. Health and availability for Vancouver. They're not quite as banged up as City, but they do have their fair share of injuries. Ryan Gauld, their starting attacking midfielder, is out with a knee injury, and he should remain out for the St. Louis game. He's missed a few weeks. He was running laps at training, but their head coach was still a little, I would say, wishy-washy about his availability, and he wasn't training with the team. So Gauld has 1 goal in the 3 games that he's played. His loss should be a big loss, but the fact that they've been so successful without him is kind of a testament to Vancouver. Other injuries for Vancouver: Jaden Nelson, starting left winger, likely to miss as he was only running laps as well. He has a goal and 4 assists in 5 games, so he's a big piece of the puzzle for them. Matias Laborda, out with a hamstring injury. He's a starting center back for them. Sam Adekugbe has a hip injury. He's their starting left back, I believe, out last week because he was in full training, so I would expect him to play. So they've got basically Gauld, Nelson, and Laborda out. They've got a lot of goal-scoring threat besides these guys, but Adekugbe has 2 goals in 2 games himself. So you add that attacking threat back in, or the capability of those goals back in, and you've got an even more potent offense. The biggest Vancouver storylines that I've been able to follow is they've been able to excel in both MLS and CONCACAF Champions Cup. This is a team who plays us on Saturday, and then they go to play Inter Miami next Thursday. They're through to the semifinals. They didn't really win last game. They more won on aggregate, away goals, those kinds of things. But they'll play Inter Miami on April 24th and the 30th. Unlikely to impact the St. Louis match. So the fact that they have fixture congestion it's a Thursday match past us. So next week is when their MLS match may be a little impacted. I wouldn't look for really anything to change for them here. And Brian White is absolutely on fire. I was raining his praises before we started. Brian White has 6 goals in 7 games, 4 last week. I had to Google what you call a match where a guy has 4 goals because it was so rare for me. Do you guys know what you call a 4 goals in one game?
What is that?
According to Google, in English speaking leagues and languages, it's a haul.
Oh,
Yeah. So Brian White had a haul last week. And so
as in HAUL. That's a haul.
HAUL.
Got it. I was thinking a hallway haul. I don't know why.
Nope.
Got
A haul of goals. St. Louis. I mean, do we want to spend time talking about the last few weeks for St. Louis? Because this is not great. We're 12th in the West at this point. 2 wins, 4 losses, 2 draws, 5 goals for, 6 goals against. Our goal differential had been one of the things to hang our hats on, being defensively strong, and now it's in the negative. We're on a 4-match losing streak. The last week we lost 2-1 against the Crew, 2-0 against SKC, 1-0 against Austin, 1-0 against Philadelphia. We've got to right the wrongs. The trends for St. Louis, we've had defensive lapses of late that have led to 4 goals against in 2 games, but they've been in these moments. So we've had one of those types of teams where 90% of the match we're defensively strong. We're absorbing pressure for the most part, even though we're not generating much offense prior to the Columbus game in that streak. We were defensively strong, and now it's kind of we're struggling to find the balance, I would say, in making sure we can generate a good attack and faltering on our defense. And while we're generating more chances, and we'll talk about that chance generation soon, we're continuing to struggle with finishing, especially after Columbus. 1 goal in the last 4 games, not going to cut it. And the last trend and story to follow for St. Louis is going to be health. St. Louis is getting healthier, and we should see some of that, not to give away too much, but we should see some of that, especially maybe in the wing role this coming week against Vancouver. So exciting to possibly see that. And the players themselves, so we've got positive news coming in the future. It's going to impact this game a little bit. And those players are Giannis Horn and Thomas Totland. Yeesh. Giannis Horn, Thomas Totland. Horn was nursing a thigh injury. Totland was nursing a hamstring injury. Both returned to training in full. They have been for the past week plus, so they should be available for selection. But I caution folks to be cautious. Both of them are coming back from these injuries. They haven't played minutes in a little while. I don't know if they're ready to start. I think minutes will be a factor, especially after what we heard regarding Cedric Toyshirt still not being 90 minutes fit. And this is his 3rd game back from injury. So be a little cautious on what you expect from Horn and Totland. But the fact that Totland himself is coming back, and we've been struggling at that right wing back spot to create some kind of energy from the left where Conrad Wallem is, that's a great indication. Roman Berkey, he began wearing gloves at training this week, like I talked about on our midweek show, still waiting medical clearance. We're recording on Thursday night, so it's possible he could be cleared on Friday or even Saturday morning, and he would likely slot in as soon as he's cleared. Olaf Melberg has said that as soon as he's cleared medically, he's probably going to play. Other guys that are still out, Rasmus Alm, still not training. He was in sandals on Wednesday. Jay Reed, Joachim Nilsson, both of them were training and running solo. They're not participating with the team yet. So Nilsson and Reed is on the upswing. That's good. Bad news, though. Chris Durkin still out with his MCL injury. The good news is it shouldn't need surgery. Olaf said that his injury should not require surgery, but he's going to miss more time. And Olaf Melberg did not put a time frame on that. All we know is there's no return to play plan. Edu Leuven, I asked on Wednesday about an update on Leuven, trying to be obviously as sensitive as possible on this. Olaf just said that he doesn't know when he'll be available to return. So Edu Leuven's still out with non-injury on family leave. Then I mentioned Cedric Toyshirt. So Toyshirt not quite back up to 90 minutes as of Wednesday. But I don't see why he wouldn't start in this game. It's just I wouldn't expect Toyshirt to finish the game yet. We've got the return of Horn and Totland on the horizon. Phil, I don't know what we can realistically expect from them, but that's at least something to be excited about, right?
Yeah. I think we've talked about, some bravery going forward and whether people are defensively stout and kind of wavering between all-out attack on the right wing or making sure that we're safe on defense on the right wing. And it would be nice to have a little of both, because I think what we're realizing with Totland out is how good he is, at least, of being a two-way wing back. And so I'd love to see both attack and defense on that side and let, Vollum do his thing on the left and see what that combined attack can do to mix up defenses or at least pin back some of the other team's wingers at the very least. And not have to be a one-sided attack, Matt. I think you were basically leaning into that, and we've talked about it for weeks now at this point. So Totland especially is someone that I'd really, really like to see back. And of course, Horn, looking at some of the stats, Horn is really important in the buildup, especially. If you look at people progressing the ball, it's like Hartle and Horn when both of them are playing in a game. So looking at that phase of the game, if we want bravery in the buildup, that's something that I will look forward to if he can get in there, especially with Nilsson out. So I'd love to see them both back. Totland, not being fully healthy, do we want someone playing the wingback role, running as much as a wingback does when they're not totally healthy? I'm worried as well. Stu, I don't know if you're back, if you want to weigh in on those thoughts.
I'd rather not risk Totland at this point. Make sure he's fully healthy. We've seen before what kind of coming back too early and recurring injuries and how that can kind of build up over time. I'm not gonna act like a doctor or physio and say that's what's happened with Alm and Nielsen, but certainly they've potentially been rushed back or come back when they're not fully fit and ready. And I hope Totland doesn't have that same sort of trajectory going forward.
Oh, you just garnered the ire of a lot of listeners when you compared Totland's injury recovery to Nilsson and Alm. Even with the juju factor, let's not even make the comparisons.
Any thoughts from you, Matt, on that?
I agree. I really don't think we're going to see Totland start. He's not going to be in my projected lineup, but I do look for him to see minutes. And same with Horn. And one of the reasons that I reinforce that thought is Olaf Melberg has been very willing to sub the wingers and the center backs. It's not like a Bradley Carnell team and a John Hackworth to an extent where you could count on 3, maybe 4 at least of the subs were in the attacking end because those players are pressing high. They're sprinting the most often. And so you're subbing them out. I think Giannis Horn, to your point, Phil, is one of our better ball handling center backs, and he is brave. When he was in that left center back role after Wallum had come on after the first game or two, I mean, I was locking him in at that left center back, no matter what, with Nilsson, with Baumgartel, all those other players. Horn is willing to carry the ball at his feet. He's willing to push higher on the field, and that lets Conrad Wallum get higher up on the field, where he told me his favorite positions are those attacking wing roles. And so he loves playing wing back, but he loves being in the attacking end on the wing, creating out there. And if Giannis Horn can take that space and allow Conrad Wallum to move up, the left side just becomes so powerful. And then the opportunity is there for maybe a Timo Baumgartel slide in at the right center back. I don't want to assume he is a candidate for right center back yet, but Olaf has 2 ball handling center backs, wide positions. If you put a ball handling center back on the right side with Thomas Totland, it evens it out. It takes away that whole 88% of ball progression on the left side that we saw a couple games ago. And it creates the unpredictability that we really need in this offense. Because if teams know that you're progressing the ball through the left side exclusively, they're going to defend that way. And it takes away so much of that creativity options and the unpredictability. So we might start in a manner that looks similar to the Columbus Crew, but I think Olaf will now have more weapons in the second half for this game.
You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you for joining us as we dig into Vancouver. And now we're about to dig a little bit deeper. We call this the tail of the tape. And I really like this because if you aren't sure, if you're like a fan of soccer and you're not sure what to look for in a game, this gives you little things you can watch for, not just who's on the field, not just who has the ball, but look for tactical moves that both teams will kind of push and pull in this game. And even if you are a good study of the game, it can kind of confirm and deny some of the thoughts you might have going into this game of both sides. So Matt, can you dig into that for us, please?
Yeah, let's look at Vancouver. So Vancouver is going to come out almost guaranteed in a 4-3-3. They've ran it pretty much all season, despite any injuries that have occurred. They've got Brian White up front. They've got Emmanuel Sabi and Daniel Rios that are flanking him on the left and right wings. Vancouver is strong in so many areas. I mean, you've got the supporter shield leaders right here. So obviously they're going to be strong. And in the metrics I was looking at, in fact, they did not have any weaknesses listed. That's got to be said up front. I've never actually seen that in the 2 years we've been doing this for MLS. So that's something right there where no listed weaknesses. Their strengths, what do they do well? They are great at attacking set pieces. They scored a goal off of a corner last week. They convert some of their set piece opportunities. They create chances using through balls and individual skill, meaning they have a great midfield in Pedro Vite, Sebastian Berhalter. These guys connect and they generate really well into the attack. But they also have individual skill with the ball at their feet. I was talking before we started recording about Emmanuel Sabi. And this guy he reminds me of Celio Pompeu, but more direct to goal and more willing to put the ball on net. He does dish off to Brian White, but Sabi is so good at not just taking space, but also beating guys on the dribble. If he doesn't have space, he'll create it for himself. So they're dangerous in how they progress the ball. They're dangerous with the ball at their feet. If they get the ball to one of their 3 attackers, they're just a really strong team, and they finish their chances. I've got stats to back this up, and it's kind of scary at how efficient and effective they are in converting all the chances that they create. They also protect leads well. I mentioned earlier when they're scoring early in most of these games, they've only lost 1 match so far, Chicago Fire 3-1. They've been protecting their leads. They get a lead and they don't lose it, but they don't also bunker. That's the thing, is they are good at staying on the offensive, staying with that high energy. And they're good at just winning the duels and the battles that they need to. Aerial duels are one of the strongest things for the Vancouver Whitecaps. They're the 2nd highest aerial duel win percentage after San Diego. This is a team that can send the ball long. They don't need to progress it on the ground. It's just an extra facet to their game. So they are a massively high XG generating team, in addition to finishing 5 matches with an XG of over 1.5. St. Louis has 3, so it's not like St. Louis is massively behind in what they're able to generate as far as chances go, but 5 games out of 8 over a 1.5 XG. They also have the 2nd highest XG per 90 in MLS and the highest goals per 90. So that's the finishing right there. They're among the highest in the league, 2nd in generating expected goals, and then they're the highest in MLS in actually scoring the goals per 90. Very efficient in passing. I mentioned the through balls. I mentioned the individual skill. Well, you've got a couple guys that I'll talk about in a minute, and I mentioned them, Vite and Berhalter, who are just absolutely incredible with their ball progression. And most of the passing goes through those guys, but they're very efficient in their passing. This is the thing. They have the 5th best completion percentage for short and medium passes, basically everything under 30 yards, and the highest completion percentage in the league for long passes over 30. They just don't turn the ball over when it comes to passing. So St. Louis has their work cut out for them when it comes to interceptions and cutting off these passing lanes, because Vancouver is so incredibly efficient. They are top 5 in medium and long passes completed. And so it's not just accurate, but volume wise, similar to expected goals and goals scored. They're not just having a few passes and completing them all. No, they're one of the top passing teams as far as volume and completion in MLS. 2nd most progressive passes in MLS, meaning progressing the ball more than 15, 20 yards from one point to the next. They have the most key passes in Major League Soccer, which means a pass that leads to a shot. They have the 2nd most passes into the penalty area, meaning they put the ball into those dangerous areas a lot. Are you sensing a trend? This team is just really good at controlling the ball and putting it into dangerous areas. They're good at taking him in those dangerous areas, creating chances, and then finishing the chances. This is the total package team. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you haven't already, discovered by my stats here, this is going to be a scary team to play. And St. Louis has their work cut out for them. We thought Columbus was something to be, as a fan, fearful for because of how quality they were on the ball and how they worked off the ball. Vancouver is fantastic with the ball, and they have the 5th most possession in Major League Soccer as well. So they spend most of the game with the ball doing all of this. They have the 3rd most crosses into the penalty area. So when it comes to where they progress the ball, they can do it from all over the field. I mentioned Sabi. He usually has the ball in that left channel area, but they can use their wide wing areas to create crosses dangerous with the ball all over the field. There's just a lot that Vancouver worries me in what they're able to do with the ball. So St. Louis has a lot of their work cut out for them. When it comes to how they're going to defend this, you could bunker, but you could also high press and try to create that uncertainty and confusion in your attacking end. Something that they tried to do with Columbus, but I think I said this to you, Phil, off air. I had a problem with the way we were high pressing against Columbus because it cost us 2 points. So when Olaf Melberg talks about the quality in high pressing, and that's why we've been playing a little more conservatively when it comes to our defense, I think back to the second Columbus Crew goal, where we had 7 attackers, 7 players in the attacking end, high pressing, and Columbus carved us up right through the midfield and scored a goal. And that's how they won. So I worry about high pressing too much against this Vancouver team who's so good at completing passes and beating presses.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Took your breath away a little bit. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I just thought you had more to say about St. Louis. And so, Stu, I
Yes.
imagine you have some thoughts on the way St. Louis has been playing. There's this, conversation about, defending too much, we got to attack. Well, now some goals have been given up. Do we play? It falls into the player conversation as well. So, Stu, any thoughts on St. Louis, how they counter all of these talents that Vancouver has? Oh, I think we might have lost Stu.
Stu doesn't think we have a chance. He has nothing to say for how we can counter Vancouver.
Yeah, it sounds like they won't give up the ball. Will they carve up St. Louis though? Columbus, I expected to carve up. Some carving would happen in that game, and we were pressing more forward at that second goal. It was embarrassing, but every time you see St. Louis miss a guy and then another guy misses, a team like Columbus, that's what they're on the run at that point, right? And so I half expected it. It looked embarrassingly easy on that one, at least, not the other. But it happens. But I think for me, I take this game as we're still trying to figure out our identity. We're still trying to recover from all of the injuries. You still continue to figure some things out. And one thing that I liked defensively, so it fits perfectly here in this last game, was Baumgartel was awesome in that game. And I think I don't know if it's a Baumgartel thing or if it's a Melberg thing, but Baumgartel and other center backs were just pressing super high into the midfield to just disrupt. And I felt like every time that happened, it worked very nicely. And, that second goal, there was no center back interrupting that. It was just like in a weird zone where they couldn't quite get up there. And it was on Yaro's side. Yaro wasn't doing it as much as the other two. So it is what it is, but I really like that wrinkle. I'd like to believe that's a Melberg move. I think the attack is a little better as well. We're figuring some things out. And as we get people back, we just need to claw back and use every game as a practice toward becoming that St. Louis that we hope we are in the playoffs. And for me, and that defensive wrinkle at least is something to hold on to, in my opinion.
Well, and this is an evolving team. Like I tried to ask Olaf Melberg, and I probably phrased it wrong, but I tried to ask him this week about how he's taken a team from 2024 that was one of the worst defensive teams cumulatively in the league. 63 goals allowed in 34 games is terrible. And he took that team and he did what he did in the first 6 games or so, where he turned us into a defensive powerhouse. But it kind of seemed like it was at the expense of the attack. And so it's too simple, and I realize it, to say that the focus was on the defense. You get that strong, and then you can create a working offense, a working attack out of that. And it did seem like they were a little more willing to press, like I mentioned, in the game against Columbus, but also that generated a lot of chances. The problem is they were a little porous in their defense. They did have some holes, but if I'm, without being too critical, you could easily argue that the porousness of the defense was kind of on just a couple of players, especially the second goal that I mentioned about Columbus. That was just a really well-made transition. They just split right through our high press. But the first goal, I don't want to dog a single player too much, but that was Salio's fault. He was ball watching. I mean, you could look at all the other players on the field, but there was one person who had responsibility for that one player, and he saw him, and it was Salio. It was just a mistake. Players have mistakes. Salio's not the greatest defender, but and this is probably an answer on why he doesn't play wing back, and he's a striker more this year is what Olaf sees in that. Now, I don't want to be too harsh on him, but it's just a highlight of the fact that overall our defense was strong, and you have that one little lapse that if that's not there, changes the complexion of the game because Columbus doesn't score at that point, and they're not able to get one back before half. That's the kind of, I think, mental acuity that we need against Vancouver. Is we still do have a strong defensive structure, and I think over the past couple of games we're seeing that transition more into, all right, how do you take the quality we have in defense and stretch it a little bit? Timo Baumgart was a perfect example. And I think that is what Olaf wants his center backs to be doing. It's creating space and creating verticality from Henry Kessler. We do not want to have three center backs that are all horizontal, all keeping the same line deep. We want to use our center backs, our wide center backs, to progress into the midfield, ideally with the ball at their feet. That helps them take some space that they've been given, opening it up a little bit for our midfielders and our wingers. Talked about this last week, that with Marcel Hartl playing a deeper central midfield spot, that makes it all the more important for your center backs to actually take the ball a little and give the ball to Hartl higher up the field. You can't be asking Marcel Hartl to come back at a near center back level and take the ball, because you're completely neutralizing him from the attack. And he's capable of being a part of the attack, even at playing this box-to-box 8 or a second 6. It's just you need to have quality center backs that are able to progress the ball. We saw enough of that against Columbus that I'm willing to say that's a thing we could look forward to be excited about against Vancouver, is the continuing evolution of what that buildup looks like for St. Louis. And it's not like we didn't create chances against Columbus. This was our third highest expected goal output of the season after Colorado and LA Galaxy. So we were doing what we needed to do to win against Columbus. It's just the finishing. We are the second worst team when it comes to goals minus expected goals, indicating that we're just among the worst in Major League Soccer currently at finishing our chances created. We have about 5 goals scored, and the numbers say we should have scored around 9 or 10 by this point. We're leaving half of our goals on the table that we're putting ourselves in good positions to finish. So there's enough positivity here that says we absolutely stand a chance against Vancouver, no matter the quality that they have and what they've been able to do against a previously best defensive team in the league, Austin, putting up 5 goals against them. We have the capabilities here. The pieces are starting to come together even without a completely healthy lineup over the past couple of games. So that's what I'm excited about in this Vancouver match. It's continuing to build off what we did against Columbus, but I don't know how else to put it other than, if you put yourself in good positions to have quality shots on goal, you got to finish. And if you're not finishing, Olaf's got to find somebody who does. I'm not ready to say you flip out Cedric Teuscher because he missed his one chance that he had. I'm not ready to say you flip out Simon Betcher because he couldn't finish the 2 or 3 chances he had in the second half. But this cannot be a trend. You cannot continue that.
But a lot of this goes back to, I think we're seeing Olaf not being conservative, right? I think either he's been told or he's heard us complain, and he's going for it instead of being conservative and trying to get out of there without giving up, so yes, they're trying to figure it out, but I think there's also what we go right back to what the question we asked, which is he's still trying to find that balance of attack and defense. And I just, as fans, again, Vancouver, we're not in a place to be amazing against one of the best teams in the league right now. I think we can still win a game. But if we're still trying to figure out attack, defense, and figure out what we're going to be, the playoff team that we hope we can become, it's a developmental game, and we're still trying to figure things out. And just if it's a 2-1, game, at least we scored a goal, right? Klaus could have had 2. That's a lot better than the 1-0 losses that we've seen recently. So just remember what we're asking for, and remember that the team is still in an adjusting phase. As fans, I think we can definitely do that.
One thing that I do want to point out, because there's a question in our chat from Daniel Gavura: why do we have to sacrifice the attack to fix the defense? We should be able to attack like we did at the end of last year and defend like we have this year. I actually might argue that at least a few games this year, we are attacking like we did last year. We just were overperforming our expected goal output in those wins last year. I'm looking at the last few games from last season, wins against the Earthquake, SKC, and Houston Dynamo, where we scored 2, 3, and 3. We had less expected goals than we did against the Columbus Crew. So that's why I go back to, we are creating the chances lately that we need to be creating to win games. We're just not finishing like we were at the end of last season. And that's not an Olaf Melberg problem. So the what he's instructing and what he's getting out of the players in the buildup, it's getting better. And I want to see that defensive side shored up and those moments, corrected. Yeah. But like, let's be honest about what's really happening at this point. We're starting to see the trend that we're generating the chances more and more than we need to. We're just not seeing the finishes. And so honestly, like,
I'll just say though, push back on that. I'm a little snake bitten because not finishing the XG chances is exactly what we saw with Carnell. We've talked about that before.
Sure.
And it is a sign of a badly coached team because we've seen what this team can do. The quality's there. The salaries are being paid. I think Lutz has gotten really good deals on all the players that we have. I think we've gotten, I think they're more valuable than what we paid for most of them, not all of them. So I think this team should, when healthy, be super competitive. And I'm not willing to say it's just the finishing quite yet. Not yet.
That's fair. I mean, Olaf is absolutely not without reproach here. I mean, there's a lot to criticize with our.
Like I said, I'm snake bitten. Like I'm just basing that on the previous experience. I'm not sure that's just him, but I'm worried. I think that's fair to say, and it's a fair worry.
I agree 100%. I'm not completely on Team Olaf with everything he's been able to implement right now, but I am liking the trajectory that it's going in a lot of ways. The other thing that I'm really liking, Phil, when it comes to St. Louis, Klaus. I think you're starting to see, and I mentioned it on social media that I think last week I'm hoping was his coming out party. I think what we saw from Klaus last game was not just exciting, but it was really heartening to see in his second straight performance of 90 minutes. You're seeing a difference from the narrative a few weeks ago where Klaus, I made the call that I thought Klaus was just not in favor. Olaf didn't rate him. He didn't favor him. And so he wasn't going with him. But the more data we have, the more we can start to, piece things together a little better. And it really seems like as Olaf was trying to figure out how he wanted to implement the attack with these guys, he's also figuring out whose skill set works best in conjunction with others and who's able to do, who is that best 11 essentially. And Salio mentioned something last week when he talked to us about having a sit down with Olaf and the staff and telling them what he does best. And we're seeing now Salio, I expect him to start this week. We're seeing him as he's getting more and more minutes, do what he does best on the dribble, in the attacking end, creating for others, being dangerous out wide and in the touchline. And Klaus is similar, where in the past couple of games, as he sees more minutes and he gets more comfortable in this kind of position, he's able to do more. And so you're having Klaus with what I think was his best game in a year. And he had the opportunity. He now has the opportunity to build on it.
Agreed
so you're talking about Klaus with not just a goal, but multiple other chances created. And he's doing the work still off the ball. He's doing the work to connect the lines. That little, the toy shirt almost goal, 13 minutes last week. That was because Klaus held up when I think it was Morales passed him the ball with a toe flick to Marcel Hartl that then progressed it to Cedric Toyshirt. Klaus doesn't do anything pretty, but he does things pretty effectively. And that's what I think he can build off of the last couple of games. And if Klaus is in form, I think St. Louis is absolutely on the right path to righting this ship. I don't know if we're going to fully right it against Vancouver, but I absolutely look for us to build on it based on the quality that we saw from last week.
We are Flyover Footy. You're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS. Boys, we've gone completely off the rails, and we rarely do that on the KTRS portion of our show. But we do have a wind down, so we might touch on some of these stats that we haven't gotten to in our wind down version on our podcast. If you haven't heard it, please do check it out. But before we do that, before we get to lineups, Stu, we've lost you here and there, but I'd like you to kind of dig on your thoughts. We've talked about defending, we've talked about health, we've talked about what this team can be. We've seen some improvement. What do you think you're seeing right now in St. Louis, and where do you think they should go, or where do you think they plan to go?
Well, one of the things we've talked about off air with Santi brought this up, was kind of what we expect out of, it was the next three matches, but it was Columbus, Vancouver, and LAFC. What kind of results do you think we need? And I think the point was made that momentum needs to be seen through these three matches. And, ideally we're seeing goals scored as well. Matt, earlier you said you want to believe in Olaf. And I think I would love to see Olaf Ball succeed, because that means the team succeeding and we're winning. Columbus was positive. Trending in the right direction. I think like the first 3 matches of the season, the Columbus game is going to kind of be viewed in context of these following 2 matches. If we do a good show against Vancouver, we shut down Brian White, if that's possible. 7 goals in 4 matches against us. So Brian White is a machine. That's pure vibes are Klaus is a confidence player. And I'd like to see him build off of last week and hopefully show some of those kind of crazy finishes that we know he can do.
Stu, you perfectly put a bow on that conversation there. And thanks again to Santiago and our DMs for, he's really good at looking at those kind of segments and zooming out a little bit on progress and, as we go. So well done. Thank you, Stu. Guys, let's get into the lineups. This is a very strange show. I hope everyone's enjoying it. Matt, why don't you lead us off with your lineup and we'll add ours.
Yeah, my lineup looks a lot like it did last week. Ben Lunt. And one thing on Ben Lunt, he himself, I'm sure, has been circling the Whitecaps as a revenge game of sorts for himself. The reason that Ben Lunt had the kind of, what am I looking for? He had the narrative behind his goalkeeping coming into this season. The reason that he had that was because of his performances against Vancouver. He's started against them twice out of these 4 matches we played him, and he's allowed a total of 7 goals. I mean, both of them were at BC Place on turf, so Berkey didn't play. Ben Lunt has a chip on his shoulder. There's zero doubt in my mind. All of those goals that Brian White scored, a lot of them came against Ben Lunt. And so he himself, I think, is going to be geared up for this match. Ben Lunt anchors this game unless Roman Berkey somehow becomes healthy in the next day or two. That's a caveat, obviously. I actually have Giannis Horn, Henry Kessler, and Timo Baumgartel in my lineup. And the reason that I do this, I don't have Thomas Totland, but I want to just say real quick, I have Horn in my lineup and not Totland because of our depth at center back and our capability to sub someone like Josh Yarrow in a little more easily than, let's say, somebody for Thomas Totland. So that I think is a difference in depth. So Giannis Horn, Henry Kessler, Timo Baumgartel. I got Kyle Hebert back at left wing back. I got Marcel Hartl and Alfredo Morales at center mid. Conrad Wallem is my right wing back to start. Salio, Klaus, Cedric Toyshirt up front. It's a very similar lineup to last week with, I think, the inclusion of Giannis Horn instead of Josh Yarrow. I don't know what side Hebert and Wallem are going to line up on, but Olaf really seems to like starting the game with Conrad Wallem on the right side, opposite of Salio, for whatever reason. Now, the first thing that goes wrong, Wallem moves back to the left. So I don't know what the rhyme or reason is, but he ends the game on the right side again in the attacking mid. Conrad Wallem can do just about everything. There's a reason why he is, in my opinion, is like a near DP value type of player because of all this versatility, the quality he has on the ball. He'll move wherever he needs to when Thomas Totland enters the game.
What do you think, Stu? What's your lineup?
I'm actually going to go same with Matt. I didn't find it in me to nitpick a spot to, call someone out. That would be different. I think that's the lineup that gives us the best chance in this match.
Yeah, and I don't want to change anything either, except for I think we let Klaus rest. I know he's on a roll, so I kind of question that actually. And maybe Celio, I don't know. I would take out Klaus though, because you mentioned Vancouver being really good in the air. That worries me with Klaus. And I think if they're hard to get the ball from, I think transition game is going to be where it's at. So I'd like to start Simon Betcher and have him run at them all game long, just like we know Brian White will. A bit of a revenge game. He played for the Whitecaps. It seems like they kind of didn't value him to the level maybe they should have. So I'd like to see Betcher start, let's say, over Klaus. And then, if we need to get a goal, Whitecaps are going to be more defensive anyway, so having Klaus to break up a bunkered defense might make sense late in the game. Let's do our predictions for the score, starting off with a new baseline that we've been adding to our shows, the Vegas betting odds. What do we have, Matt?
Yeah, the odds, and I looked at a few different sites. Somehow the odds were favoring St. Louis as of Thursday. Plus 205 to Vancouver, plus 135 to St. Louis. Plus 260 to draw. Only one MLS game favors the visitors, and it's CF Montreal hosting Orlando City. So at least early on, it seemed like home field advantage for MLS is winning out with this one. but I still favor Vancouver, and I've got a 2-2 draw as my score prediction, just because I'm not yet. I want St. Louis to prove to me that they can win before I'm willing to jump back on that hype train of picking them to win. And I do think we did enough against Columbus last week to have at least drawn. So I'm willing to give St. Louis at least that benefit of the doubt.
What do you think, Stu?
I'm gonna go with 3-2 St. Louis on this one with Brian White.
It's a good ad
I'll be
there.
optimistic.
Talking about Vegas betting, that might be a good one to go with.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 2-1 loss. St. Louis is going to lose 2-1. I'm looking for progress against the Whitecaps, but I'll just say it. Confidence is at nearly an all-time low. I guess it got pretty low there with Carnell, but with the injuries we have, I'm not sure what they can do against a team that is that good. So a draw to me would be darn near a win. And as far as like gaining momentum, that would be actually really nice going into the LAFC. But you know, they need to show it to me. I need to see something special in this game. So that's my prediction. Sorry, guys. Anything else before we go, Matt, Stu?
I don't want to end on that, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of things that could fall into place for St. Louis to pull this out. And what this would be the most shocking result of the week if St. Louis pulls this out, because the hype is on Vancouver, and the hype is on Vancouver taking a win here into playing Messi in CONCACAF Champions Cup. So we have the chance to be the spoiler of all spoilers in their upcoming week.
Completely agree. Stu, last thought?
I mean, it could be a trap game for them. And
I think there's a delay. I'm just going to wrap it up, guys. Here we go. How should I do that? Let's see. What did you end with, Matt?
Yeah, let me end and you'll be able to cut yourself in.
Yeah.
I think we can play a spoiler against Vancouver as they go into CONCACAF Champions Cup. They might be overlooking us to an extent. Eyes around the league are on Messi against Vancouver. So this is our opportunity to play spoiler, and I think we have the quality to do it.
Completely agree, Matt. I think that's a good way to go into this one. That's it from us, everyone. We're Flyover Footy. You're listening on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you for joining us as we go over this game. And, it's a little dark, but I do think there's some hope. And no matter what, honestly, win or loss, we're coming to these games. We're rooting for our team. And I'm still very much enjoying every week that I can be in Energizer Park. So hope to see you guys there. Let's root for our team. Bye, everyone, and thanks for listening. Okay, we're out.
Sweet.
Drinky drink. Be right back. Stu, are you going to hang on, or you headed out?
I'll hang around for a few minutes. My internet works. Am I coming through now? Even reset the router.
Yeah.
We got more Open Cup talk.
Right.
That's right.
Be right back, guys. If you have any questions on the live stream, drop them in the chat on either YouTube, X, or Instagram, because we'll get to them. I'll continue to riff on my point earlier that if you look back at last season after Hartle and Toy Shirt and them arrived, like we obviously scored a lot more goals compared to what we've been doing this year. Looking at starting with the SKC game that Toy Shirt appeared in right before Leagues Cup. 1-4-2-2, 1-2-3, 0-3-1. So we were only shut out once in that entire time against LAFC. But the expected goals, basically like how quality were our chances and, did they match up with that actual output? It wasn't great. 0.8, 1.5, 0.7, 1.5, 1.5, 1.7, 1.2, 0.4, 1.5, 0.7. we've already created 3 higher XG opportunities in our games so far this season than we did at all when we had Toyshirt and Hartle and Betcher join at the end of last season.
And
Like,
the defending's better.
And the defending's better. Yeah. So, like, I don't know, man. The numbers are really starting to support Olaf Ball a little bit more than the results are. And I get it. Like,
Yeah, but the eye test.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. The like it looks rough, especially because the possession numbers are so damned low. Like, you can't give that many chances to the other team is basically the problem. Like, the eye test, the perception, the reason it is the way it is because of how low our possession is and how many more chances we're giving to the other teams. Also, like,
yeah, in the end, you have to finish eventually, and those chances, say against Sporting KC, that yielded high XG, they're great, but you have to.
That's my point. That's 100% my point. Is like, I am actually coming around more to supporting what Olaf is doing and getting more and more frustrated with our players' inability to finish. And the only difference, the coaching and the style, so there's a lot of differences, but Marcel Hartle's positioning is also pretty different. He was never playing this deep last season for us. He played it for St. Pauli, so like, it's not the point of him dropping deeper for St. Louis isn't that it's new to him, it's just new for us in where we need him. It's honestly not unlike Edu Leuven to an extent. Like, Hartle's dropping back because we don't have Leuven, and Leuven dropped back because Leuven's best position was back, and we had Hartle to take that spot up front. And remember at the beginning of the season, especially, and I think probably the end of last season, folks were wanting Edu Leuven to be more involved in the attack. They didn't like the fact that he was dropping in so deep in the central midfield. But we backed up that quality with a guy like Marcel Hartle. The problem I have now isn't that we're not replacing the quality in the attack with from Marcel Hartle that he'd left. It's that they're not finishing. Like, I like the attacking trio of Salio, Cedric Toyshirt, and Klaus. I think that works. And I don't know.
I do too.
I don't want to like belabor the same points I've had, but it all starts from the back line. Like, Jonas Horn, Timo Baumgartel, Henry Kessler, if they take more advanced positions to begin our building out of the back from better spots on the field. You can't build out of the back from parallel to the 18-yard box and expect consistent success. You need your center backs to be progressing the ball into that middle third of the field to begin your actual build out of the back. Like, that's how you become effective with that and better put the ball in better positions for your higher players. All right, rant over.
No, the rants are what we're here for. That's the
that was free for the live stream too.
I would like to hear a question. Like, I know you said you were going to ask that kind of thing, but I think if I went, I would ask, like, where do you want Hartle when it comes to, like, if we get a goal, what part do you want Hartle to play in that? Do you want him progressing the ball? Do you want him providing the assist? Do you want him providing the finish? And if so, does where you're playing him reflect that desire?
We could save it for the pod recording, but the answer to me is progressing the ball for others. I don't need Marcel Hartle to be my goal scorer. I need Marcel Hartle to be involved in the buildup.
Okay. See, going into the beginning of this season, I would have said he needs to be in and around the goal, even if he's not finishing it.
Yeah, I probably would have said the same thing. I think I might have even said the same thing, but I'm seeing the quality of players that we have more in the attack in Klaus, Salio, Toyshirt, and Betcher. And I'm okay with that if Hartle's the one who can put the ball in the right spots for them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just curious what.
Yeah. There's probably no. I mean, you're not wrong. Like, if you put Marcel Hartle in a position to score just as much as he's creating for others, we're gonna be a better team. But my whole thing about Marcel Hartle is similar to Edu Leuven. It's, where do you need, for the betterment of the whole, where do you need that player of the highest quality?
But that's not what I'm trying to get on a question like that to Melberg. I'm just
I
curious
know.
what Melberg thinks. You know what I mean?
But
Like
the
what we're
answer,
seeing every week, like, is that because he's plugging a gap, or is it because that's where he wants it? You know what I mean? And I've felt like since the
oh
beginning of
yeah.
the season that he's using Hartle
Well,
as a gap because of what you're saying, the center backs aren't progressing the ball.
I think your answer is probably as far as his level of quality, your answer is probably in who we are rumored to be scouting to
I
bring in.
was going to ask that too.
The Frederick Jensen rumor and report, Jensen would be more of an attacking midfielder, likely. Like he's played all over the field in wing roles, a right midfielder most recently for Augsburg, but he can play the 8. He can play central midfield. And I think you have when Hartle and Leuven are on the field, it's an easy answer because Leuven can drop back. But now we have our answer to me of if you remove Leuven, you plug Hartle in that central midfield spot because you need that spot to be so short up. You're valuing that box to box 8, second 6 so much higher. And you're probably happier with your quality in your attack as more so than you are in central midfield. And that's why you're putting Hartle where he is because he needs to be there right now. So I think the answer to you is he's there out of a need, not out of a want. Because if you want to put Marcel Hartle where you can, you put him in the attack because you have Eddie Leuven and a better replacement at central midfield. And it's kind of, I don't know. I feel it's a bad reflection on Thomas Ostrak, honestly.
That's what I was thinking too. Yep.
Like I see in the chat, who put it? Sammy
Pizza's all.
Do you think Ostrak should start over Morales? No, I absolutely do not. I think they don't play the same type of a central midfield position, and they're not asked to do the same things. Alfredo Morales is more asked to be a legitimate 6. He stays deeper. When we had that game, it might have been SKC, where it was like a diamond-looking midfield, and we had 4 midfielders in a 5-4-1, and it was more of a diamond. Morales was that bottom tip. And he was not asked to progress the ball. He would distribute from those deeper areas, and he does have a great cross. We saw it in this Columbus game with Simon Betcher, but I don't think that's Ostrak's best spot.
I think if Celio hadn't been so good and continued to be good, we would have seen possibly seen Hartle go back up high and maybe seen Ostrak as the second 8.
See, I would love to see
try
that.
it out.
We're just not. It's one of those things I'm not comfortable like projecting it because we haven't seen Olaf at all have a tendency to do that.
If Leuven was there, I think we would. I would have loved to see it with Leuven there.
Yeah, I agree
Leuven
with that.
and Hartle and Ostrak at the 8, but
I agree with that.
It never happened. They played Watts. Anyway, we should go.
We should go. I was trying to get to bed early tonight, and then all of a sudden we just started talking that not even related to the pod.
We've got a vibe going here, Matt. Here we go. Welcome everyone to the wind down. Clean one. That one.
Much better than a couple weeks ago, that's for sure.
Not a lot of fizz, but very clean.
Yeah. Let's use that as an omen for a cleaner performance for St. Louis City this weekend.
Take that. Very nice. Well, we're going to lead with the Open Cup talk, and I think a good way to do that is to open it up to Matt to give us the details, and then open it up to Stu. Stu, I'd like to hear everything you got on the Open Cup. So, Matt, why don't you lead us off, and we'll go from there.
Oh, well, the big story, you guys alluded to it at the very beginning of the show, is that St. Louis City knows who we're going to play in the round of 32 for the U.S. Open Cup. Third round matches concluded this week. There was a draw, as Stu said, on Thursday morning on Morning Footy on the CBS Sports Golazo Network. And St. Louis was in a group with Minnesota United, Louisville City, and Union Omaha. And the draw went Minnesota United, Louisville City, Union Omaha, St. Louis City, I believe.
Yeah.
And so basically the way that this works is the round of 32, then the match will be between St. Louis City, Union Omaha at Energizer Park on May 7th at 7 p.m. Louisville City will play Minnesota United that week as well. And the winners of those two will play at the winner of Minnesota United, Louisville City. They have hosting rights, not just for the round of 32, but in the round of 16, the winner has hosting rights. That's what this draw was for. It was for the round of 32 and 16. Now, after this, things will be reseeded, but St. Louis will host on May 7th. And then if we win on May 7th, we will not host that next game. I personally think Louisville City would be the more fun opponent, not just because they're a lower league opponent, but the history that Louisville City and St. Louis has, the Kings Cup next iteration, so to speak. I think that would be very exciting. But this one itself, it's a rematch of 2023. You guys talked about the match between Union Omaha and St. Louis City back in 2023, and it was a banger of a match. Goals scored all over the place. 5-1 win by St. Louis City, with goals scored by a brace from Aziel Jackson. Eddie Leuven had one late, and there was an own goal and Nikhil Watts. So fireworks. Union Omaha is looking to avenge that, but Union Omaha has not been in great form. We'll preview them later on, but they start their USL League One season with like 5 away games. They've got a losing record so far, and they obviously won this week to advance, but it's a fairly good draw, I think, for St. Louis. And fixture congestion is going to be the name of the game at that point, with a midweek MLS match, with the U.S. Open Cup, and we just hope that we have injuries that have subsided by that point. But I did enjoy the U.S. Open Cup matches this week. So that's kind of the heart and soul of what St. Louis has to look forward to. Tickets on sale now, by the way. It's GA. Look into the tickets, because there's different pricing for the supporter section and the rest of the stadium, but it is GA. So it's a massively unique opportunity to buy a ticket, show up early, and get into a really good spot for not that expensive.
Yeah, and that last game from Omaha was a cup set, so it was, they're a third tier team in the USL, and they beat San Antonio, who's a second tier USL championship. So, they did punch up in the last round, and the worry is they could do it again. Stu, what are your thoughts going into this game, or maybe about the draw itself?
Well, the draw was fun. Talked about it a little bit. It'll be fun to see Union Omaha return, and Union Omaha supporters are called the Parliament. So, a group of owls are a parliament. So that's kind of a fun little fact. Max Schneider's returning. City 2 alumni, has been with Union Omaha for 2 seasons now, I believe. Or is this his 3rd season?
Third, yeah.
Yeah, 3 seasons. They're giant killers. In 2022, they upset 2 MLS teams to make it to the quarterfinals or round of 16, and then we kind of rained on their parade in 2023. So they're not a team to take lightly. Lou City was the matchup I really wanted, to be honest, because of the history that Matt talked about. But they're also the best of the 2 lower league sides. So last night was crazy, and the night before was crazy. If you love penalty shootouts, and if you're neutral, then last night was the night of chaos for you. 6 or 7 games went to penalties last night. So that is just absolutely crazy. Tacoma Defiance are the last remaining MLS Next Pro team. They got matched up against Portland Timbers, and they are hosting the Timbers at Starfire in Tacoma. That's going to be a fun one. I don't know if we want to get into every individual matchup, but there's going to be some fun ones. The one that I'm most excited about is outside of St. Louis City, of course. Our Tampa Bay Rowdies are finally hosting Orlando City SC, and there is a lot of bitterness between these 2 fans going back to, over a decade, when Orlando City was part of USL and Rowdies were part of NASL. The fans hate each other. The front offices don't like each other, and it'll get chippy on the field. It might get chippy off the field. So Rowdies will host at Al Lang, which I think is one of the best soccer-specific stadiums in the country. So that'll be one to keep tabs on.
I like some of the geographical matchups here. San Jose, Sacramento. As much as I wanted the Burrito Boys to move on, I really like that matchup that I didn't watch at all because I was watching the Switchbacks game. But Sacramento, the failed MLS bid against the Burrito Boys, El Farolito, that was that would have been a great cup set. I would have absolutely loved that. But San Jose, Sacramento, that proximity, that's good. Rhode Island, New England Revolution, that proximity is good. I can't quite bring myself to root for the Chicago Fire, but with Chicago, Detroit, I absolutely will not root for Detroit City.
Oh yeah, right. Because of the supporters, we've covered this.
We have. I love the Tacoma Portland one though. I got to throw my 2 cents in for that. I think that's a hilarious like twist to the Cascadia Cup and the rivalry between the Sounders and the Timbers. Can you imagine the Sounders fans being able to hold that over the Timbers if their MLS Next Pro team can beat the Timbers this year? That's the kind of like, if there was a fun aspect to Next Pro teams being in the US Open Cup, and it's really hard to find one, and we have a lot of complaints about that in general, this is actually kind of a fun thing that has occurred because of that.
Oh yeah, and Timbers fans complained for years that in the Open Cup they only get matched up against Seattle. Well, they're not matched up against Seattle technically, so that's fun. Rhode Island, New England will be a really fun one too. Rhode Island's hosting there, so kind of some New England action, and Rhode Island's going to be really up for that one. Colorado Springs and Red Bulls are
that's a weird one.
Yeah, they try to go geographic, and there's always someone who kind of gets the short end of the stick, and that's Colorado and New York this time around. So that's unfortunate, but yeah, that San Jose Sacramento game, I think Sacramento, everyone was cheering against them yesterday, and in 2 weeks, most of the neutrals will be cheering for them.
Yeah, so. I like the intrastate matchups in this, and I think there's a lot for the Open Cup. Like we mentioned a couple of those in intra-region with Rhode Island, New England, but Austin and El Paso, Nashville and Chattanooga Red Wolves. I think those are going to be some fun ones too.
I was wondering if Pittsburgh won, so I wondered if Bob Lilly would come back to St. Louis. That would have been a fun storyline. The coach for Pittsburgh Riverhounds, but he hasn't had. He's such an amazing USL championship coach, legendary, one of the best out there. Just does amazing things with just random guys you wouldn't expect to all of a sudden take a step under his management. But he hasn't had that much luck in the Open Cup. So, that's one to watch. Pittsburgh versus New York City. Rooting for Aiden Stanley at Indy 11, as always. There's so many former St. Louis players in one form or another. So that's another way you can kind of follow along with what teams you root for, is how many St. Louisans are on that team.
Yeah.
There are a lot of St. Louisans spattered around this cup, and that's been fun. Stu, any other thoughts on the matchups, the draws? And maybe we should start talking about what St. Louis might do against Omaha, because typically you don't play all your starters in that midweek matchup, especially.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure, Matt, this is where your brain was going with the homegrowns. This is going to be a match that you're going to see the homegrowns play. But again, Union Omaha, they're going to be up for it. They've taken down MLS sides before on the road. So I don't think Olaf can totally upset the apple cart with throwing a completely different 11 out there. But I think he will rest a good portion of his players. Do you think Lunt starts, or does he rest on this one?
I think it depends on when we get Berkey back.
Yeah.
Like if Berkey returns in the next week or two, then I think Lunt plays, because so let's level set the schedule upcoming. We have St. Louis, Vancouver this weekend. We have LAFC St. Louis the following weekend, Seattle, St. Louis the weekend after that, and then the midweek Open Cup, and then San Diego, midweek KC match, Minnesota. So there's a couple midweeks that are going on now back to back. If Berkey comes back and he's healthy before the Seattle game, I think absolutely Ben Lunt starts against Union Omaha. Otherwise, if for some awful reason Berkey's still out, it's a Christian Oliveras game,
who used to play for Omaha. So that's another storyline. So
on the homegrowns and everything like that, I think this Union Omaha is going to be the opportunity for the city debut for Tyson Pierce. I think that is something I'm
Mm.
looking forward to. I would be ecstatic to see Tyson get that opportunity. And so there's a couple of off-roster homegrowns that we've talked about in the past few weeks, Phil, Mekhi Joyner and Tyson Pierce. They have unlimited call-ups to non-MLS matches. So they can be called up without really reproach for as many Open Cup games as they want. And it's not going to impact anything else. Whereas a guy like Brendan McSorley, if you call him up, he gets 4 loans during the season because he signed to City 2. And so he would be using one of his 4 call-ups. Now he can appear in 2 MLS games, 2 US Open Cup games. That's fine, but he only gets 4 total call-ups. And so Mekhi Joyner and Tyson Pierce as off-roster homegrowns, completely immune to that for non-MLS games. They also get 6 call-ups for MLS games. So Mekhi Joyner has that availability for 5 more. Miguel Perez, Caden Glover, they are just homegrown players. And so I would expect to see potentially them. But it's also going to be a game where you see Joey Zielinski. You're going to see Michael Wenzel. And you might see Jay Reed. I hate to put that out in the world to say I hope to see him, but he's tracking to return soon. He hasn't yet joined the club, but he's been getting more and more involved in training over the past couple of weeks. He's progressing well. So he had foot surgery on January 3rd. I circling him in with pencil that I would love to see him against Union Omaha. So you could be looking at a back line that kind of consists of, or at least have your left wing back or your right wing back, maybe a Tyson Pierce. You got Joey Zielinski back, like right center back type of thing. Michael Wenzel. There's a lot of fun things that you can see happen. Jay Reed might be a left wing back. And then maybe you get like a Yarrow or Hebert there as your other center back.
Interesting. It's Zielinski's been a good soldier being on, the bench and not playing for City 2 all these weeks. That's been interesting. So
yeah, Zielinski's been a head scratcher for me so far this year. I still have yet to fully understand the mindset of signing him to a contract and doing what you're doing with him right now, because the opportunity has been there to give him a chance at a right wing back, and it hasn't been taken. I'm not in the camp of we need to see Joey Zielinski because I don't know enough about Joey Zielinski to know if he's quality out there. And I've made this point in the past few weeks, at least, that at this point, a lot of fans are wanting an unknown quantity, or an unknown quality of a player in Joey Zielinski because they've seen what we have to offer in lieu of Thomas Totland, and it's not great on the right side. And so an unknown is better than what we know to be subpar. And that's not a given that Joey Zielinski would be better. It's just we haven't seen him. And that's part of the question I have on why did we sign him? Why didn't we sign him to City 2 if he's just going to take up a roster spot? Now, not saying we were going to use that roster spot for anything. It's just, I don't know. That's one of the few questions that I have in this roster build that really doesn't quite make sense to me yet.
Stu, what do you hope to see? What homegrowns, who do you think maybe won't play?
Well, I think this lineup and how Olaf approaches it will say a lot about how he feels about Joey Zielinski and Caden Glover. Will Caden get minutes? Will he not? Will Zielinski get minutes or not? I mean, in some ways, Tyson Pierce is also the unknown. He hasn't played a City match also, so I wouldn't expect him to start, to be honest. I think Zielinski would start. And then maybe Yarrow, Wenzel, and maybe even like a Hebert, depending on how you want to solidify the back. Hebert's, I think, maybe a little too valuable in Olaf's mind to play in midweek. But if you wanted the sturdiest lineup, or Baumgartel instead of Hebert, but we'll see. I think Joyner will get a lot of minutes. I think Miggy will probably start. Just for exposure's sake, but go ahead.
I just like how you qualified your Kyle Hebert statement with as Olaf sees him, as opposed to just saying Kyle Hebert's quality.
Oh, you're not baiting me into something there. No, I think
I was waiting to clip it off.
No, I think I mean Hebert's one of those guys, when we talked about it before. He at times he doesn't pass the eye test, but he recovers quickly.
Yeah.
If he gets beat. There were moments in the Sporting KC game, not to go too deep into it, but I saw Wallum would make a run and Hebert either didn't see him or what have you, and that was frustrating from a fan perspective. But
Well,
no, I think Hebert is a rock overall to have on this team.
the joke is that Hebert has eyes in the back of his head, but he doesn't have them in the front of his head.
Oh yeah, and Sebastian brought in the chat in JGR, and do we have a wellness check on JGR?
Does it say something that I totally forgot about him when it comes to projecting? And I was just talking about him earlier in the day. We were talking in our DMs about U22s and another guy that we just don't know the plan for. Like Joey Zielinski, I should not have harped on him as long as I just did, because what are we seeing with JGR here?
Yeah.
I get, so he had the acclimation thing. It took a while for him to kind of get his body right from Australia. He's 20 years old. He's a kid. And so there's a massive adjustment coming into America last season. I didn't expect to see him a lot last season, but I expected to see him a little bit more this year. And I know he had some kind of injury going on with his lower body. I don't exactly know what it was, but he was on the injury report. He was out for a few games. So he's been in training for a couple weeks now, full training with the team. I just don't know where he fits in, because he's a center back / central defensive midfielder. He, if I recall correctly, began his career as a center back and then transitioned to a CDM. Is that right? Or did I have that backwards?
He was playing center back for Sydney FC.
Yeah. I think it was sandwiched. CDM in the middle with center back in the front and back, I think.
So, yeah. And so he brought that versatility, so to speak. But the problem with versatility is you jack of all trades, master of none. And we haven't seen enough to know about JGR, if one way or another. Last year, he only made appearances in the defensive midfield. He didn't appear for us at center back at all. And we know how deep we are at center back, even with the injury to Nilsson. So I'm not looking for him to slide in at center back right now. I'm just, with the injury to Leuven and Durkin and the massive amount of minutes that we've suddenly thrusted upon Alfredo Morales, it has shocked me that we haven't given JGR a chance at the defensive midfield spot yet. And I don't, there's not enough data to read into it yet, because he's only been back in team training for a few weeks.
We also haven't had a game to shut down where like that'd be
accurate. Very true. So the and I have actually praised Olaf's tactical adjustments and substitutions over the past few weeks. I think he's been a good tactician in the second half. So it's not my place at all to judge his utilization of the subs and personnel. It's just individually with JGR. And yeah, we did pay. It's not like $800,000. We paid an $800,000 transfer fee for him. I was able to find that out last year when Sydney reported the 7-figure transfer fee, but it was in Australian dollars.
That's right.
And so he has been our most expensive, as far as cash goes, U22 signing. You know, Durkin was our only other U22 signing, and arguably cash plus 2 players is more valuable. But we paid a lot for JGR. And from a team like St. Louis, that Stu, I mean, you probably have the numbers from when you did this evaluation. We have not spent a lot. We spent, and in proportion to what we spent on transfers, a lot of it goes to Klaus, and a lot of it goes to JGR.
Yeah. If anyone out there wants to go through and get really frustrated, look at the U22 players across MLS and the cost that they were in transfer fees and what a lot of teams are investing compared to St. Louis, if that's the approach we're taking. But yeah, JGR, he's an enigma. I mean, just he's
an enigma.
Almost as unknown as Tyson Pierce and Joey Zielinski in some ways. And everything I think we saw of him last year, I mean, how does Olaf rate him overall? I mean, where does he fit in here? So managers like different players and different fits, and it seems like JGR is kind of a guy without a spot at the moment.
Tyson Pierce, I think, fits though with there's a bigger story with our homegrowns going on right now that Tyson Pierce fits into. Tyson's only 17, right? He was our most recent homegrown signing, or second most recent. Sorry, Mekhi Joyner was the most recent. But Tyson Pierce, I think, is the only player who hasn't really had any kind of chance for City as far as the homegrown players. Caden and Miggy had chances forced upon them, I think, because of injuries in the past couple of years. But it's been notable. I guess we've protected Tyson Pierce in that sense. And so I think that has probably, and he's also made strides with the youth national team, right? He's been making appearances as he's progressing up into those levels. So the quality, so is Caden Glover, but the quality is clearly there and clearly being scouted. It just goes back to that narrative of when are we going to play our kids more? And if you're not getting the production out of your guys that you're paying quote unquote big money to, when are you going to give minutes to your kids?
I think it was surprising to see Joyner look pretty good. Now, I don't know what they thought about how he performed within the system, but Joyner didn't look out of place in that MLS game.
It was like, what, 10 minutes that he played?
To me, I think he needs more.
It
was a little too good to not give him more. But I will say that, I hope that isn't the hesitancy with Glover. Glover hasn't even played much City 2, if at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we'll see him. I'm wondering about like Jaskalainen. And I'm getting like a feeling that Pierce would be like a sub because I think they've been protecting him from getting too many big boy minutes. I don't know if that's good or bad at this point based on what Joyner looked like, but I think Perez deserves a look. And who would you pair him with? I think him and Watts would be fine together. I'm pretty sure. Perez has like 2 or 3 assists and a goal. So that's pretty cool.
Well, so I'm reminded of something Olaf said at the press conference when I called him out on playing the kids and tried to get him to try to understand what's going on here. And he actually, what he said is probably a good foreshadowing for what we can expect for the US Open Cup, which is if a player has been training or trained with the first team, then they're a candidate and Olaf is at least willing to play them for City. And to this exact topic, Emil Jaskalainen, Caden Glover, Miguel Perez, Mekhi Joyner have all trained. Cam Silly has trained with St. Louis City. Tyson Pierce really hasn't. So, I mean,
Cam's a good shout too for getting a start, honestly.
Yeah. And I could probably see a couple loans, Emil Jaskalainen, Brendan McSorley, maybe. He's also trained. So, that could be your striker duo or 2 of your 4 attackers, rather. Brendan McSorley and Emil Jaskalainen. But you also do have, Mekhi Joyner, Caden Glover's out there. Cam Silly, who has been playing left back for City 2, also had played midfield in the preseason with City. That's another short-term loan possibility that I think, because Olaf had said he will consider people who have trained with City. That to me is the best indication we have of who would see time that is more reaching into the throes of City 2 or the depths of our roster.
There was also one more comment, and I'm going to throw to you here, Stu, in a sec. So I just wanted to say this comment I've really dwelled on. It was the first time I think he addressed not playing the kids. Yeah. He said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he said something like, I can only play who's on my roster. Something like that. And
he alluded to the MLS rules and stuff. Yeah.
No, to me, it felt like maybe Lutz wasn't making them available, or it was Lutz's almost like he's controlling who's available to me. Not, I don't have a say. Almost like he isn't in charge of that. And maybe I'm wrong, but it's just been something that kind of sits in the back of my mind. So
yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective. I don't think I'd considered that Lutz was keeping some people off limits, so to speak. I don't know. Well, in the back of my mind, and I want to preface this, but I have zero data to support this. This is just a random thought that occurred to me. Is you guys remember Aaron Hurd?
Yep.
The deal that he was going to Leverkusen and that had been in the works for so long. Aaron Hurd didn't see a lot of time on the field for St. Louis. And yet he was basically promised to a Bundesliga team when he turned 18. It's a thought that occurred. Is there something going on in that regard where there might be some kind of agreement to transfer Glover at that time? Again, zero data to support this. This is pure speculation, so don't go reading into it like Matt Baker said that Caden Glover has been promised to a Bundesliga team. Please don't do that. But it is a thought that occurred, and it lines up just based on what we saw from Aaron Hurd.
And it can go two ways, right? Like Hurd is at Bayer Leverkusen at this point, right? We figured that out. So
yeah,
he's there. He's good enough to be there, and they're at least giving him a shot. We're not playing Glover that much either. Is he good enough to go over there? And maybe another team would use him more. It makes me wonder if this is like a systematic problem. Just little inklings of like it could be. I don't have proof that it's not. It's not like we've always played the kids a lot, and we go and look at someone like Seattle and Dallas, and they've played the kids over the years, and we're not really.
And Glover is 18 though. I think Glover is 18 now, so it's not like they're waiting for him to turn 18 to transfer him to the Bundesliga, like kind of what happened with Aaron Hurd.
Yeah. I'm not too worried about that, but I don't know. We keep going on tangents. What do you think, Stu, about all this and all the homegrown players we've been mentioning?
Well, I think we have some talented players. I mean, for people who have been following, the U16s defeated Bayern Munich U16s in the Generation Adidas Cup in Bradenton, Florida, 2 days ago?
Yeah, they had that goal that was highlighted by like every MLS Next social media account.
Yeah. So there is absolutely talent in the system. I mean, Glover had youth call-ups with U15s, 16s, 17s, 18s, and 19s now, or you skip 19s, maybe 18s to 20s. I don't know with Glover. Before he turned 18, I thought it might be something like Aaron Hurd. I know we talked on here a few months ago, before he turned 18 in March, that he might be earmarked for a Bundesliga club. But he's 18 now. He hasn't left, to our knowledge. He might have simply fallen out of favor for all we know. That happens too. And he's 18. He has a lot of time and room to grow, and we'll see what comes about with him. I would love to see minutes from any of these guys. But one thing I would really, really love is to see kind of a, not redemption arc, because that's a bit too harsh, but to see a reblossoming of Miggy Perez.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he's clearly grown, because he wasn't like an assister and a goal scorer, with City 2 years ago. So he's grown.
And that was the concern with Miggy when he had his loan to Birmingham last year, was coming back and kind of hoping that he didn't regress at all.
He did not.
No, he definitely didn't. And he put on size this year too.
Yeah. In fact, City 2 might be holding him back a little bit. I think it's more that than the other. So
yeah.
I think I've said, let's give you guys each one more chance to say anything else. I've said my piece, so I've had a lucky day here. Matt, let's start with you, and we'll end with Stuart before we sign off. Matt, any last thoughts about that?
I actually like that you did that, because I was gonna ask you how we can transition to talk about Fredrik Jensen for just another moment, and we had no good segue to it. So I'm gonna use my time to talk about him for a second.
Perfect.
The transfer window in MLS closes next week, April 23rd, I believe, and so we're kind of on the wire to sign somebody if we're going to sign somebody in this window. We have a roster slot open. We have 2 actually, senior and supplemental. And so Fredrik Jensen, why is he on our radar, and what should we be concerned? He's on our radar, obviously, because Transfermarkt has a 3.5 million euro valuation to him. So he clearly has promise. His injury history, lack of production has been the biggest thing that is a question mark, not his physical talent, not his capabilities. 100 matches in Bundesliga over the last 6 seasons. The thing that I keep reading about Jensen is what he's starting to kind of get back into lately, as opposed to in 2024, where he had 2 reported surgeries. I think he had an operation on his calf, and he had groin surgery end of last year. His head coach for Augsburg, I think it's head coach, Jess Thorup. He said just a couple months ago, Jensen is now on a path back to the old Jensen. And I know what I get from him. In the 60, 70 minutes for which he had energy, he did very well. This was like in his first few matches back from groin surgery. So if he comes to St. Louis, I think we almost have to try and discount the injury-laden seasons and hope that he passed medicals and is back to full fitness. This is a pure and simple trust in Lutz type scenario, where the caliber of player is there, we would actually be paying a transfer fee to get him because his contract goes until the summer. So it would be worth it in that regard to Lutz at least. The question is, where would he slot in, and what does this mean for potentially Eddie Leuven and Chris Durkin? Because I don't know that we have massive room if both of those players are healthy and fit and available. But because, like I said at the very beginning of the show when I talked about our injuries, we don't know with either of them right now for very different reasons. But quality is quality. And Jensen has a lot of different positions that he can play well. So at the end of the day, you have to trust in Lutz that the injuries are no longer a concern. You don't lump him into the perennial injured folks that we already have on the roster, because that's the low-hanging fruit of this scenario. You look at the promise, you look at what the staff at Augsburg is saying. Keep in mind it's a Bundesliga club, and if he's seeing 60 to 70 minutes, right, return from an injury, and if the injuries are behind him now with this groin surgery thing done at the end of last year, then it could be a steal, kind of similar to Marcel Hartl being a steal, and the value we got from him. So Hartl we got on free DP price tag, yes, but there's jokes about where we get these players, Bundesliga experience. This is Bundesliga. It's not a 2 Bundesliga player, and so I hope for the injuries to be behind him if we end up signing him. And I do know that the quality seems to be there, even if his goal scoring resume is not there. It's one of those, he's doing what he's asked to do, playing different roles for that team. And who knows what exact role he would be playing for St. Louis, whether it's an attacking midfielder, a winger, deeper, so Hartl can move up. I don't
know. 2 quick things on that. Indy Vasilev was name dropped by Mellberg, well after he was traded. So he could fill a role. Perhaps Mellberg has something in mind for him for that. Maybe a direct buy just for Mellberg's request there. But also I just see this as like a stopgap that could pay off down the road if he stays healthy and gets back to his previous form. It's like he's a Band-Aid that can fill a gap until everyone's healthy. And if it doesn't work out, it's hopefully a good enough deal that it's not.
He does have good. I mean, he has good comps in his last full season healthy against other attacking midfielders. I mean, he's good at progressive passing. He's good at winning aerial duels. He's good at dribblers tackled. I mean, he's defensively strong up there, so he has good work rate.
Nice.
And so some of the metrics in his last fully healthy season are really strong. And yeah, in the chat, Sebastian mentioned one interesting stat that Matt Doyle pointed out. Our poor take on rate. Jensen has a very successful take on rate, like cool. Really well. So, good on the ball, hopefully good under Olaf's system. It's one of those trust in Lutz things. I gotta say.
Yep. I'm with you there. Stu, last thought from you.
When was his last fully healthy season though? Was that 7 years ago? I'm looking at his matches played, and I think it was 17-18 in Eredivisie.
Yeah, Bundesliga time, marred with it. I would say 23-24 was last healthy-ish. Last time he played 1,000 minutes, 1,300 minutes. So.
Yeah, I mean, that would put him at 75% healthy, 25% injured on the season.
That's the concern. I mean, that you have to hope, and that would be the thing. If he gets hurt and he misses time, it's not like we didn't see it coming. So it's a gamble to be doing this in that regard. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, high risk, high reward, and a guy like him coming over in the height of the summer where it's going to be hot, MLS travel's brutal. Those are my concerns.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I got to pump up the Open Cup. At the end here, I kind of try to get, if you're here, that means you're some of our nerdiest listeners. And I just want to get you guys to just invite everybody out to this Open Cup thing, show MLS that it is an important tournament to us. And again, if not St. Louis, then who, right? We push our history hard, really hard. And Open Cup is a massive part of that history. So I just encourage you guys to invite all your friends. I reached out to my ticket rep and I said, can I do a group rate or anything? Because I think I'm going to invite a lot of people.
Nice.
And you can do it 2 different ways. You can get a cheaper price. I won't quote that over the air. I'll let the sales rep do that officially, but you can do that and buy all the tickets ahead. There's also an option where it doesn't save you much money, but you get a link. And so you can just send that link out, and it's so much easier because they click the link and they pay themselves. So you don't have to be responsible to buy all of those tickets and then divvy them out, as you know how much of a problem that is. We've all done that before. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the link. I'm going to send it to all my closest friends and send it to every acquaintance that I know that has anything to do with soccer. Everyone that said, hey, invite me to a soccer game sometime with your season tickets. This is their moment, right? This is that time to hit them up and be like, it's only $38. I just quoted that link version. So you're only saving $2. It's a $40 game, but a great opportunity. Even $40, it's one of the cheapest ways to get a nice close seat if you get there nice and early. If you want to experience a different side of the stadium, because we all know the traffic can be tough during the games, check out some different restaurants. I might go to the other side. So a lot of opportunities depending on what you want. Bring the kids. I think it's going to be a fun affair, and we got to fill that stadium, guys. So thank you for sitting through my evangelistic Open Cup speech. Anything else from you guys before we go?
No, I'm just looking forward to this Vancouver Whitecaps game. I think it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out brawl, and I think that St. Louis is going to show up because, like I said, we don't really have anything to lose at this point. Nobody favors us. Vegas is what it is. And I bet those lines are going to change before the game, but nobody who covers MLS or pays attention is betting on us to win, and we can spoil Vancouver going into CONCACAF Champions Cup. What better way to get back on track?
Love it. Stoop?
Just Go City. Looking forward to turning around and getting back to winning ways.
Could be rainy. Someone mentioned that in the chat earlier. So
yeah. We're supposed to get like 4 inches of rain between Friday and Sunday.
Could be a grunge fest. Could be in our favor too. So all right. Enjoy the game, guys. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.